If you're a Chicago Bears fan, stop me if you've heard this sentence before. Going into last season, the Chicago Bears, surrounded by a very elite defense led by names like Akeem Hicks, Khalil Mack, Leonard Floyd, Kyle Fuller, Eddie Jackson, were disappointing on the offensive end, led by probably an inept quarterback and more than likely a head coach who is in over his head. After an 11-5 season in 2018 led by quarterback Mitchell Trubisky in his rookie season, the Chicago Bears came back to earth last year, going 7-9 and missing the playoffs. What happened to the Bears last season has to seem like deja vu for many Bears fans, having one side of their ball being completely elite, being top end of the league, while the other end seems to struggle to really make any noise and make any impact positively for the team. I don't say what many people say about Mitchell Trubisky. I still think he has a bright future in the league, but even I can't say that he didn't disappoint when it came to his play last season, but I'm not exactly sure if everything is to blame solely on Trubisky. Whatever you want to say about his inaccuracy issues, you can't deny, if you're a Bears fan, the O-line issues that were present in Chicago. And you also can't fault him for play calling and certain, I guess, emotional and mental struggles that were in Chicago, really from the front office down. The Bears have solely hinged their franchise on two players, and that is Mitchell Trubisky, which it makes sense. You would want to hinge your franchise on a quarterback, but they also hinge their franchise on an outside linebacker who, Khalil Mack, is all-world talent. There's no denying that. But I'm not exactly sure if he's the player that you want to trade what they've traded for him, as well as what they've traded for Trubisky. And given the track record that Ryan Pace as the GM has for the Chicago Bears, I'm not exactly sure. Even though he's not very great at drafting, you still want to have as many picks as possible to get as much talent as possible. And even when he has drafted, it's weird because it seems like Ryan Pace drafts better in the late rounds than he does in the early rounds. Take his first draft, for example. In the first two rounds, you've got Kevin White and Eddie Goldman in the 2015 draft, which, if you're a Bears fan, I don't want to bring up Kevin White to you. He probably brings back terrible memories being the number 7 overall pick. But you also have Eddie Goldman, who's still with the team. He's still a solid contributor. But in the 4th and 5th round, you've got Jeremy Langford, who was a solid running back in his time in Chicago. And you have Adrian Amos, who probably, I don't know if I, from an outsider perspective, thought Amos was a solid free safety. But I know some Bears fans didn't really like Amos. And that, it seems like there's been an ineptitude from Ryan Pace and the rest of the front office in Chicago since he took over. You know, Leonard Floyd was drafted number 9 overall in 2016, which I'm not going to say it's a bad move. Leonard Floyd just wasn't the number 9 overall player in the 2016 draft. But he still was probably a first-round talent. He probably was just overdrafted. But you got guys like Nick Kwiatkowski falling to them in the 4th round. That's a great pick. DeAndre Hall to the 4th round. That was a solid pick for them. Jordan Howard in the 5th round. That was a great pick for them. But none of these guys are still on the team. None of these solid players, solid contributors that they have drafted, they're no longer in Chicago. I will give Ryan Pace props for what he did in the 2017 draft with only 6 picks, or actually 5 picks that he had. He only had 5 picks in the 2017 draft. And I understand Mitchell Trubisky is not the quarterback that Chicago wants right now, or whatever. However you feel about Trubisky, yeah, they didn't take Mahomes and they didn't take Deshaun Watson, but they took Trubisky. Whatever you want to say about it, it's over. In the 4th round, they got Eddie Jackson, and then 7 picks later in the 4th round, they got Tariq Cohen. And they probably overdrafted on Adam Shaheen in the 2nd round, but I don't really know if he's been given the chance that he probably should have in Chicago, but that just feeds into a later problem that I'll get into with Ryan Pace. So going through Ryan Pace's draft history, I'd say he's pretty hit or miss. You're either going to get a guy who's going to be a really good contributor, or you're getting a complete bust. In his first round, he's got guys like Mitchell Trubisky, Roquan Smith, which I don't know if you want to call Mitchell Trubisky a bust or not. He's hinge. He's in between bust and solid pick. But then you got names like Kevin White, who I don't know if he was even on the team 2 years later. And it not only is the draft history that Ryan Pace has, it's free agency signings that really make you scratch your head. Pace did a somewhat okay job bringing back solid contributors to the team like Deion Bush and Eddie Jackson and Danny Trevathan. He brought those guys back, which it's what he was supposed to do, so I'm not going to give him great props for that. But then you have signings like Robert Quinn for a 5-year, $70 million contract to a guy who's already in his 30s, who he's had 2 or 3 years with double-digit sacks, and you're going to give him $70 million to be... He really is supposed to be Khalil Mack's other sidekick, which I don't know if Robert Quinn is that. I don't know if Robert Quinn's going to be... I'm not sure Robert Quinn is going to be that much better than what Leonard Floyd was bringing them, and you could have gotten Leonard Floyd at half the price at least. And then you got Jimmy Graham, who has never played up to his New Orleans standards. It seems like it was forever ago that Jimmy Graham was being an all-pro in New Orleans, and he got a 2-year, $16 million contract. Not only did he get 2 years, $16 million, he became, as well as draft picks like Cole Kmet and Adam Shaheen, he was part of a tight end group where Chicago had 10 tight ends on the roster at one point. 10 tight ends, double-digit tight ends. I don't care who you are. If you have 10 great tight ends, you shouldn't have 10 tight ends on your roster. Another head-scratching move was bringing in right tackle Germain Ifedi, who I think everyone... You don't even have to be a Seahawks fan to know that Germain Ifedi's career in Seattle was pretty much a joke. And giving him a 1-year, $1 million contract just makes no sense. Whether you kick him into guard or whether you have him be your backup right tackle, it makes absolutely no sense to bring him in. The Bears also made a couple of solid but not really game-changing moves, like bringing in Tashawn Gibson, Ted Ginn Jr., and Barkevious Mingo to 1-year contracts, but those aren't really moves that's going to tip the scales in Chicago's favor. However, it's not just the signings or the awful trade or draft decisions that Ryan Pace has made. It's some of the trades that have been conducted and orchestrated out of Chicago that really set me over the edge in terms of dubbing Chicago as having the worst front office in the league. The first trade that I bring into question with Ryan Pace is the trade, his pretty much first trade that he ever made, which was trading Brandon Marshall to the New York Jets for basically nothing. They got a 5th-round pick out of it, and not only did they trade Brandon Marshall, they for some reason had to throw in a 7th-round pick just to get a 5th-round pick, which Brandon Marshall in his 2014 season, I'm not exactly sure if he had an injury that season, but it was his first season being under 1,000 yards in about 4 or 5. I'm not exactly sure. But that first season with the Jets, Brandon Marshall put up 1,500 yards on over 100 catches. So I think it's pretty easy to say that Brandon Marshall was worth more than just a 5th-round pick when he was traded. The next and pretty much the biggest trade that Pace has orchestrated in his short career with Chicago is the trade to acquire Khalil Mack. They acquired Khalil Mack and basically the draft pick that ended up with Cole Kmet, and they got another 7th-round pick. I'm not exactly sure who they got with that 7th-round pick. But with what Oakland, I guess now Las Vegas, has done with those draft picks, they've turned it into Damon Arnett, Josh Jacobs, and Bryan Edwards, who was a 3rd-round pick out of he came from South Carolina, but I'm pretty sure. He's a wide receiver. But Las Vegas pretty much won this trade pretty easily, I would say. Las Vegas got way more value out of this trade than Chicago could ever imagine of getting. And the last real big trade to look at when really this trade really puts Chicago over the top of being just completely awful. The trade to get Mitchell Trubisky. They had the number 3 overall pick, and they, for some reason, thought that San Francisco was going to take Mitchell Trubisky with the number 2 overall pick, when it was pretty much all but certain that San Francisco was going to be drafting Solomon Thomas with the number 3 overall pick. It was practically in stone. And Chicago traded not only the number 3 pick, they traded the number 67 pick and the number 111 pick, and they traded a 3rd-round pick the next season in the next draft just to move up one spot and just to take Mitchell Trubisky and draft Mitchell Trubisky. I don't like bringing this up because I don't think it holds up well as an argument, but to pass up Mahomes and to pass up Watson and to trade 4 picks for Mitchell Trubisky is just a mind-blowing decision. Again, I don't like bringing up Deshaun Watson. I don't like bringing up Patrick Mahomes when talking about Mitchell Trubisky because you don't know what those two would do in Chicago. You don't know what Mitchell Trubisky would do in Houston. You don't know what he would do in Kansas City. You don't know how those 3 interchanged would react to their situations. But off pure talent alone, going into the draft, we knew Patrick Mahomes had by far the best arm in the draft. We knew he was pretty athletic. I'd say his athleticism is on par or much better than Mitchell Trubisky's, and Deshaun Watson obviously had much more athleticism than Trubisky and probably a better arm as well. For some reason, the Bears, and not only the Bears, but many people around the league fell in love with Mitchell Trubisky anyways, and I really don't understand why. You could just look at the fact that he was a quarterback at North Carolina. Name another quarterback to come out of North Carolina and have a successful career. I mean, really. And I don't like playing that card, but it's pretty obvious that North Carolina is not a football school. And he didn't lead North Carolina really to anything. He was a 1-year starter at North Carolina. I'm pretty sure it was only for 1 year. And I don't even think they had a winning season. I think they went like 6-6 or something. But he did nothing at North Carolina and became the number 2 overall pick. And I think at this point, only the Bears, only Chicago's front office could have made that boneheaded of a decision. And I know it comes off like I'm saying I know that I wouldn't have made that decision, or I know I could have done better, but I think I do know I could have made a better decision. Not only did they draft Mitchell Trubisky, not only did they trade 4 draft picks to do that, they had also signed Mike Glennon to like a $40 million deal that offseason. Mike Glennon had been a career backup. He threw like 5 passes for the Buccaneers before he came to Chicago. And he threw all but 5 passes in Chicago before they said, no, we're putting in Trubisky now. And maybe that's something that hurt Trubisky's potential. Trubisky wasn't supposed to start year 1. Neither was Patrick Mahomes, and Kansas City executed their plan perfectly. They had Alex Smith starting at QB, and they said, we're going to wait a little bit before we start Mahomes. We know he's way more athletic in terms of quarterback. We know he has a way better arm than Alex, but he needs to wait a little bit to get fully integrated into the system before we put him in. The Bears didn't do that, but they didn't have a good quarterback to do that with. Alex Smith was a former number 1 overall pick who backed up his number 1 overall pick status. He was a solid quarterback for San Francisco, and when he came to Kansas City, he pretty much was leading them to the playoffs every single season. The only reason the Kansas City Chiefs brought in Mahomes was because he was just that much more athletically, he had that much more athletic potential than Alex Smith really had. So what it boils down to for me is Ryan Pace really has done nothing right for Chicago. And as much as I don't like what the Bears front office does, it's somewhat the fans' problem as well in terms of the hype. Because every year, I have one of my best friends is a Bears fan. And every year I hear, we're getting double-digit wins. We're going to have the best defense in the league. Trubisky's going to take the next step. Or whoever's the quarterback. They're going to lead the team to the promised land. Every year I hear this, and I just know better. I understand that a team that's led by an outside linebacker could never be a successful team unless it's just an otherworldly talent like Lawrence Taylor was for the Giants. But even Lawrence Taylor didn't have that bad of an offense playing on the Giants. The New York Giants offense was at least decent. The Bears offense has nothing. Pretty much nothing. And personnel-wise, Brian Pace has done an awful job. He's made some okay moves, drafting Roquan Smith, drafting solid players on the defense. But being solid half the time is awful. It's just awful. And he hasn't even gotten a coaching decision right. I mean, look at Matt Nagy was really the number one option they had at coach. I questioned it from the start. I'm questioning it even more now. Because what did Matt Nagy prove in Kansas City before he got the job? He wasn't calling the plays in Kansas City. He wasn't. That was Andy Reid's offense. And guess what, Bears fans? The Chiefs' offense got better after Matt Nagy left. It got probably way better. So I'm going to kind of wrap this up because this video is it's going a little longer than I expected. I kind of go on rants when I talk about how bad the Bears are. But I will end it with this. Ryan Pace has done some moves correctly, but he's gotten way too many moves wrong. And that shows in the Bears' record in the 5 years he's there. I believe they're like 34-46. That's awful. That is completely awful. There's only a couple franchises in the NFL I would say have a chance at being even worse than the Bears. That would maybe be the Jets, and that would maybe be the Cleveland Browns. But the Browns and the Jets, at least, I can see why they're hopeful for their future. Because Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, for their respective teams, at least have a little bit of a chance, and they've had players put around them to at least give them a better chance at being a successful franchise. I really don't see what in Chicago gives Mitchell Trubisky or even Nick Foles if he ends up being the starter this season. And that's a whole nother question. I can make a whole separate video about the questions going into the Bears season with Nick Foles and Mitchell Trubisky. And I just saw a report while recording this that Mitchell Trubisky got his 5th-year option declined. So that all but signals the end of the Trubisky era in Chicago. And it was an awful era. Alrighty, so that's about all I want to say for the Bears right now. There's probably another 20 to 30 minutes I could say about the Bears, but I really don't want to keep everyone here for a 45-minute video. This video has already gone way longer than I wanted it to anyway. But I would just like to say, if you guys like the video, make sure you leave a like. If you want to see more content from me, make sure you hit the subscribe button. If there's anything you think I forgot to talk about or any videos you guys want to see from me, make sure you leave a comment down below. And yeah, I hope you end up having a good rest of your day or night whenever you're watching this, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.